Hello and welcome to our Keeping Trees Thriving in a Drought seminar. My name is Lori Palmquist and I'm your host this evening, and I'll be the speaker as well. So first of all, I'd like to thank you for being here and have a little bit of housekeeping, and that is that just to remind you that this webinar is being recorded and it will be up on the Zone 7 YouTube channel. The recording will be in about a week or so. That's what we're hoping for, is in about a week. And then also within a week, we're hoping to email you with the PDF of this presentation. So the PDF version of the PowerPoint will email to you, and let's see, and a link to the webinar recording on YouTube. And when we ask you, we do have one poll, and we'll have a couple of questions for you. When we do that, we'd like you to type your answers into the chat, and then also, even while the presentation is going on, feel free to type questions into the chat. And we won't be stopping for questions within the presentation itself, but we will be covering questions at the end. We'll have a Q&A session at the end. And we'll also have the water district representatives talk a little bit about their offerings after the presentation, as well as the Q&A session. Okay, so go ahead and go on to the next slide. All right. The Zone 7 Water Agency is the wholesaler in the Tri-Valley area, and the water districts that are represented here, the City of Pleasanton, the City of Livermore, Dublin San Ramon Services District, and Cal Water Service are all of these agencies in the Tri-Valley area are sponsoring this webinar. All right. The current water supply conditions. Now, California, I'm going to read these bullet points one at a time. And California just experienced the third consecutive year of drought conditions, and they're predicting that we'll have a fourth consecutive year as well. And Zone 7 has declared a stage 2 water shortage emergency, and that was back in September of 2021, so a year ago. And this includes a mandatory 15% cutback or conservation as compared to the water use amounts in 2020. The local water retailers have individual drought water restrictions for each of those retailers, and they'll be talking about that after the talk, as well as their rebate offerings. And the current allocation for the Tri-Valley area from the State Water Project is only 5%. And that's why we're very assiduously asking you to conserve and find the best ways to conserve the water supply, preserve the water supply. Okay. Now, the chart on the right shows the precipitation. Sorry, one moment, please. Chart on the right shows the precipitation for an average water year in shaded blue for the Northern Sierras, which is where the majority of the region's water supplies come from. And this year we are below average at 78% of normal. And we're below average at 80% of normal for this year. And in the water year for 2021, we were at 45% of average, and it was the third driest year on record. And then the water year 2020, it was at 60% of average. Okay, so then I have a couple of questions here. And the first one, just like you to type your responses into the chat, please. And that is, what city or cities do you live or work in? Pleasanton? Number 1, Pleasanton, 2, Dublin, 3, San Ramon, or 4, Livermore, or number 5, other. Please go ahead and type into the chat.
All right, so we have some answers coming in right now. So it looks like most people who are responding are coming to us from Livermore or Pleasanton. We do have one person who's here from San Jose. Most people are homeowners, but we do have a Girl Scout who is in the group as well.
A Girl Scout. Oh, that's awesome. Wonderful. I wonder how many Girl Scouts we have in our panel here. I was one.
I made it to Brownie. That was it.
Anybody else? Any other Girl Scouts?
I was a Girl Scout as well.
All right. Wonderful. Excellent. All right. Thank you for playing along. Really appreciate that. And a couple more people have claimed that they were Girl Scouts. Oh, my wife was regional coordinator from 2005 to 2019. Wow. So we have some Girl Scout affiliations here. Excellent. Okay, and then the second one is, what is your role? So usually we use the word role when we're talking to people in business, but so because just in case there are some business people here, what is your role? Are you perhaps a property manager? Are you a business owner? Are you a landscape professional? And if you could give your company name, that would be awesome. Or homeowner / residential customer. Please go ahead and type that into the chat.
So far, it looks like we've got a lot of homeowners with us today. I do not see anyone who is a property manager just yet.
Wonderful.
I think we've got answers from everybody. I'm not seeing any new ones come in.
Excellent. So by and large, it's homeowners then, Natalie?
Yep, we got a lot of homeowners from Pleasanton and Livermore mostly.
Excellent. Wonderful. Wonderful. Well, welcome. Excellent. All right, so then let's go ahead and dive into it. So my name is Lori Palmquist, and I am a Bay Area native and an East Bay local. And I have about 34 years now of landscaping experience. I've been a landscape professional for 34 years. I am a former irrigation contractor, and currently I am very much still involved with irrigation. I just don't dig trenches anymore. I design irrigation and I consult for irrigation, and I'm an irrigation educator as well, and thus giving the talk for this webinar. I no longer work with the public. As a designer or a consultant, I work with larger commercial projects as a designer and consultant. And let's see, my certifications include that I am a certified irrigation designer, certified irrigation contractor, certified landscape water manager, certified landscape auditor, a qualified water efficient landscaper, and I'm a master gardener and a Bay-friendly qualified professional as well. So when I was a Girl Scout, my sash was completely full of badges. So these certifications that I have here that I'm showing you, that's my full sash. I just continued it as an adult in a different way. Okay. Here we go. Actually, let me make sure there we go. Okay. Trees in California, and especially in the Bay Area, are stunning in their iconic majesty. We've got trees like the Coast Live Oak, the Valley Oak, and the Coast Redwood. That's so tall, we usually only see the trunks represented in photos. California is home to the tallest trees in the world, the Coast Redwood, the most massive trees in the world, the Sierra Redwoods, and perhaps the oldest ones in the world, the bristlecone pines. But now our trees are being threatened. As if on a planetary conveyor belt, another drought is upon us, right on the heels of the last one. Drought is our new normal. California is a dry state, and it's just getting drier and hotter. Removing lawns or simply stopping watering lawns is a popular response to the call for conserving water in our landscapes. Lawns are water guzzlers and are worthy targets for water conservation. In the last drought, we saw many people stop watering their lawns. But there's a sad consequence to turning off the lawn sprinklers that happened during the last drought, which we very much want to avoid this time around. We lost a great many trees since so many lawns that had their sprinklers turned off also had trees being watered by those sprinklers. The trees were left to fend for themselves, and too many of them died. Trees that live in lawns are used to frequent and plentiful watering. They have shallow roots and suffer quickly after the water is turned off. But they don't show visible signs of decline for a long time. To us, they appear much more stoic and forgiving than they really are. Take, for example, Christmas trees that are harvested and shipped in August and just start turning brown in January. So this scene here, this dying birch tree here, is something that I see quite a bit in my neighborhood when I go on walks and drives in the neighborhood. So the lawn has been shut off, the irrigation for the lawn. The lawn's not getting watered anymore, and the birch tree is really suffering. And so what gets hit the hardest is the high water trees, and birches are high water trees as well as redwoods. So it actually takes conifers, redwoods are conifers, it takes conifers longer to show the stress that they're under. So we started seeing the birches show their stress a lot sooner than the redwoods started showing their stress. But whereas the birches around the neighborhood look like this, we're just starting to see some stress in the redwoods as well. So I'll be talking about a good deal about watering trees and where their roots are and all of that. So here's what I'll be covering in this talk this evening. I'll be talking about the biggest trend in weathering the drought, which is lawn replacement. We call it the low-hanging fruit of water efficiency or water conservation. We get the most bang for our buck by getting rid of the high water plants, which is a lawn, and putting in low water plants. So I'll be talking about that. We'll also be talking about alternative water sources, because these problems that we're having with the trees are really caused by water shortages. And so we need to discuss and consider finding different water sources and weaning ourselves away from being so dependent on potable water in the landscape. So alternative water sources. I'll also talk about hand watering trees and how to do that correctly, how to know how much water to give them and how to do that correctly. I'll be talking about life support for trees. So then if you can't water anything, like especially if you have a lawn and you don't want to water the lawn anymore, I'll talk about some strategies and methods for keeping those trees not only alive, but hopefully thriving. And then at the end, I'll talk about irrigation scheduling for trees. All right, so let's go. Move on from the lawn. This is a fun motto. So move on from the lawn. This is the motto of the Save Our Water campaign, which is a statewide campaign for lawn replacement rebates. And I got this from the city of Pleasanton, the website. And they gave some recommendations for when you replace the lawn, one recommendation is to use sheet mulching, to sheet mulch the lawn. It's a zero waste way to smother the lawn and replenish the soil. And you could also plant some California natives and low or very low water plants, because those are climate appropriate plants. And the natives are climate appropriate, and they really help to increase the biodiversity of the area, attracting the pollinators and the habitat that have adapted alongside of these California native plants. Add compost and mulch to replenish the soil even further. And then the last one, plant during the cool season between September and February. Now, with these lawn replacement rebates, the water districts are literally paying us to pull out the lawn and put in low water plants. And every one of the water districts in the Tri-Valley area has a lawn replacement program or rebate program, and they'll be talking about that at the end. And I recommend very strongly that you take advantage of that. Okay. Now, I don't know if you're aware of this. If you watch the news at all, you probably are, but I need to mention in here that back in early June, I believe it was June 10th, the California, the State Water Board claimed they put a ban on watering decorative grass in commercial, industrial, and institutional sites. And commercial, actually, HOAs are considered commercial sites. So there is a ban on watering what they call non-functional or decorative grass. So this is grass that isn't being used for something, for instance, recreation or anything like that. It's grass that's just there for the eye, for eye candy. So they have put a ban on watering that, and that is throughout the state. And so you're going to see, if you're not seeing this already, you're going to see some areas of grass being let go fallow. They're gonna, grass will be dying, it'll be turning brown and it'll be dying, and hopefully being either covered up with mulch or sheet mulched and low water plants put in their place, or just whatever is going to happen, I want you to know that you're going to start seeing lawns, dead grass around because of this ban. Now, the ban says that you can't water the grass, but if there are trees in that grass, if there are trees in the lawn, then you can water those trees. All right, so that is a very specific thing about that, is that you can still water the trees. So this is really hoping to avoid what happened in the past when everybody stopped watering their lawns and stopped watering the trees as well. So we need to save those trees. They're the lungs of the planet. Okay, so now alternative water sources. Let's see what different water sources we can use other than the potable water supply. The first one is gray water from the house. So in California, you don't need a permit to route your washing machine water out to the landscape. They call it laundry to landscape. And in fact, there are many hands-on workshops that actually show you how to do that, and tons of YouTube videos that show you how to do it. It's actually quite easy. I've attended a hands-on workshop myself, and I really felt like I could do it after that hands-on workshop. So routing the washing machine water out to the landscape, and the best way to utilize that water is to water either trees. You can water fruit trees, you can water shrubs. You don't want to use that water for veggie gardens or edible food, especially the food that has it's leafy and it touches the ground. So it's much safer to go ahead and run that water out and water trees and shrubs with it. So gray water from the house is one. And it doesn't have to be just the washing machine. You could, what I like to say is anything but the kitchen sink and poop. Because if you're laundering baby diapers and they're poopy baby diapers, you don't want to be sending that out into the landscape. And they don't want you to route the water from the kitchen sink out there. But all the other sinks, the bathtub, washing machine, and no toilets either. Using the warm-up water from the house. So this is a practice that a lot of us developed in the previous droughts, and some of us never stopped doing it. And it's if you don't do it anymore, or you don't do it now, it's a really good idea. Just catch that warm-up water while the water is warming up, and it's not quite the temperature that you need it to be. Catch it in buckets and bowls and take it outside and water the plants with it. It's really great to go ahead and just use it. Use that water for good purpose. Also, in the Tri-Valley area, there was a recycled water filling station, and in Dublin they had it. It's no longer open, and the one in Livermore is closing in just a few days, but they are working on a combined Tri-Valley offering. The water districts in the Tri-Valley area are working on trying to get a combined or collaborative recycled water filling station going, so that can have this up and running again. So watch for that. They're hoping to be able to provide that in 2023. So we'll be keeping our fingers crossed for that one. All right. So the first alternative method was recycled water and reusing water from the house, getting the warm-up water or reusing the washing machine water or other water from the house. The next one we're going to talk about is rainwater capture. And when I say rainwater capture, I really feel like the easiest thing to do with rainwater is to capture it with the landscape itself. So we show a downspout here coming down, and it's just pointed at a dry riverbed. And so what we want to do is have our landscape act as a living sponge and to receive that free water that falls from the sky and hopefully hold on to it as long as possible. And there are ways that you can do that. And it's it's not of the thought anymore where as soon as that water sheds off the roof of the house, it's sending it right out to the gutter and the storm drains. It's not that anymore. We're disconnecting that and putting the water into the landscape and holding on to it. And some ways that you can do that are coming right up. But first, I'd like to talk about the feasibility of rainfall actually taking care of our gardens. And so what this chart depicts is we have the rainfall in inches, the average monthly rainfall in Livermore, California, in inches per month. And then I plotted onto that the water requirement of different types of plants onto that in inches per month. So we have the red high water plants, the orange is moderate water plants, and the green, the yellow is moderate. The green and orange are low water plants. So if we look at this closely and we ask the question, how well can rainfall take care of our gardens, our various water uses in our gardens? How well can the rainfall take care of that? How well can we leverage that free water that's falling from the sky and hold on to it, hopefully? So if we look at high water plants, we can see that there's enough rainfall in November, December, January, February, and March to take care of high water plants in the landscape. So that's only 5 months out of the year. So then we have to figure out in the rest of those 7 months how to get water to those plants. Then with moderate water plants, it's the same thing. November, December, January, February, and March, there's enough rain that falls from the sky to take care of moderate water plants. So both of these are only provided for naturally by Mother Nature 5 out of the 12 months of the year. So then it really starts getting interesting when you look at the low water plants and how well the average rainfall in Livermore or even Pleasanton or Dublin or San Ramon, how well rainfall takes care of low water plants. And we can see that in October, November, December, January, February, March, April, and like half of May. So it's 3, 6, 7.5 months. There is enough water that falls from the sky to take care of low water plants. So then also, if you look at this carefully and you see that in the months of December, January, February, and March, there was over 2 inches of rain. And so if we can figure out how to hold on to that water, then we can hold on to it as long as possible and put off having to use potable water in the landscape. So then let's go ahead and move on. So one of the strategies for doing that, holding on to the rainfall with the landscape itself, is with a rain garden. And there are lots of really wonderful instructions out there on how to build rain gardens. All right, so then what we also have is, well, these are landscapes that were sculpted to create rain gardens and create healthy soil sponges that, and in the photo on the left, it actually demonstrates that this is really working because it has rained. There's a lot of rain and there's water sitting in that. And so we engineer this so that we put in enough gravel and we have infiltration and we don't let that water sit for very long. I think that what it is we try to get that water to infiltrate completely within, I think it's 48 hours. So we set it up or engineer it in such a way that the water doesn't sit there long enough to start causing like a problem, like a mosquito problem. Okay, so then we have rain gardens. And we can do actual land sculpting. Now, this is a new project that we were working on where we took the grass out here. We removed the grass and then we did all kinds of little bumps and berms and little swales and troughs here and there, and just made this landscape so that when the water falls on the landscape and sheds off the roof onto the landscape, that it really holds on to the water because of its sculpting of the land. Now, dry stream beds, these are ornamental features, if you will, of the landscape that are really beautiful. And you see a lot of people putting in dry stream beds because they're really beautiful. Well, during the rainy season, dry stream beds become real stream beds, and they can be engineered in such a way. And when I say engineered, I use that term kind of lightly, like you don't need an engineering degree or anything. You just need to make sure that underneath the stream bed, you make it nice and cushy and like a sponge so that water can infiltrate into the soil. And so these are really beautiful and they're popular. And this is one way to get the water to infiltrate and hopefully stick around. Now, I'm going to go back to this one because I like to ask this question. So then how do we get the water to stick around? Because that's the big question that we always have when we consider rainwater harvesting, is that water is falling at a time of year that we don't really need it. We need it during the hot time, during the dry season. So how do we make it stick around? Well, anytime you want to store water or any liquid for that matter, you find a container. So in this case, I have a jar. Pour the water in there, put a lid on the jar. You're storing the water. There you go. Well, my friend, mulch is the lid of the landscape. Okay? Mulch is the lid of the landscape. And I say that because the lion's share of the water that's leaving the landscape and needs to be replaced by irrigation, the lion's share of that is evaporation of water from the top 2 inches of soil. So the mulch cuts way back on evaporation so that the water has a very hard time leaving the soil and then won't be needed to be replaced as often or as much. And so there was a study that was done at Texas A&M University where they found that just 1 inch of mulch on a landscape lowered the plant water requirement by 25%. So that's big. That's big. Lowered the plant water requirement by 25%. So effectively, it is some kind of lid. It's not going to store the water forever, but it's really going to reduce the evaporation and thus the water needing to be replaced after it evaporates. And then, of course, when we're talking about rainwater catchment, of course, you can use tanks, barrels, and cisterns. So I was talking about storing the water in the landscape because that's the easiest thing to do. And you can use tanks, barrels, and cisterns to store the water as well. All right. Now moving on to the actual tree section of this, and talk about hand watering trees. Now, anytime you want or need to hand water trees, or any plants for that matter, there are two questions that you need to answer. The first one is, how much water do these trees need, or does this tree need? If I'm standing in front of this street tree that I've got there that I need to water by hand, I ask myself, how much water does it even need? I don't want to just be throwing water on it. I want to know how much it needs. And then the second question that you need to answer is, when you're standing there watering that tree or plant or area of planting with the nozzle on the end of the hose, how much water are you even giving it? So here is how we answer those questions. So the answer to the first question, how much water do trees or any plants for that matter need? There is a free web app that's out there, and it's at waterwonk.us/how-much. And this is actually a web application that I developed because I needed something like this for my own work, and there wasn't anything out there that I could consult with to find out how much water anything needed. So I created this myself about, I guess about 8 years ago, and it's been up in public for all that time. And a lot of people are using this. And what it does is it will tell you how much water any plant material or planted area needs in any incorporated city in California during any time frame for any plant material and for various sizes of plants and planted areas. So if you're looking at a street tree and you want to know how much water it needs, you look at the diameter of the canopy of the street tree, and then you can put that in there. See, it says here, what is the width of the plant? So that's the diameter of the canopy. So you can plant, and so here is an example that I plugged in before I made this screenshot, that in Pleasanton, California, a tree that is 8 feet in diameter, that is a moderate water tree, requires 31 gallons per week in July. So you can say per day, per week, per month, per year, and any size of the plants as well. All right. So this answers the question, how much water does this plant material need? And then to answer the question about how much water is coming out of that nozzle when you're standing there spraying the plant, watering it, is that we have these hose end flow meters now. And it's so cool. These things they literally didn't even exist several years ago. And now they've come and they've flooded the market, pun intended. And there are tons of them on the market. And so you can put this hose end meter, and then you're on the end of the hose, and then your nozzle after that. And you can see exactly how much water is you're applying at any time. Now, somebody told me today that he bought a cheaper one and he didn't feel like it was super accurate. So I would say that if you really want to be accurate, you want to well, see, they're priced anywhere from $11 to $300. When I see price ranges like that in something like this, I'll usually go as close to $100 as I can, because then I know that I have something pretty substantial that's going to be fairly accurate. And then, of course, like if you got it on something like Amazon, you could look at the reviews and see what people say about the reliability and accuracy of it. But we have a really big price range as to how much these puppies cost. Okay. So then in the absence of having a hose and meter, if you wanted to just wing it and determine with one of these buckets how much water is being applied through your nozzle, here's what you can do. Now, do keep in mind here that these buckets that we call 5-gallon buckets are not 5 gallons. They're 6.2 gallons. All right. So I recommend not using this bucket to measure the water. So here's the process. You flow the water into the bucket for 30 seconds. Then you stop and you measure the amount of water in gallons that you flowed into the bucket. And I would pour that water into something else more reliable, that has a more reliable gauge of the measurement of gallons. And then you multiply by 2 because you flowed the water in for 30 seconds. And we want to know how many gallons a minute comes out of this nozzle. So once you do that and you multiply by 2, this tells you how many gallons a minute come out of this nozzle when you're spraying water out of it. So for instance, if we take that street tree that I was talking about earlier, and we look up in the How Much Water app and we find out that in October, that street tree out there needs 15 gallons a week. And we determine we determined by this method that our nozzle sprays at a rate of 3 gallons a minute. So then we know that we're going to need to apply the water with that nozzle for 5 minutes a week. So that's how this is how you can apply water by hand really accurately, just get a really accurate gauge as to how much water these plants need, and then giving them that amount of water. All right. And yes, a 5-gallon bucket is really 6.2 gallons. All right. Now, life support for trees. So I'm showing this one again because just to remind you that yes, we have this ban right now on commercial, industrial, and institutional lawns that if they're just decoration, if they're non-functional or decoration, they can't be watered. But also and there are trees in those lawns. So somebody might come along in a situation like this, even if you're talking about your residential home, and we're not even talking about this ban in particular. I'm using this to show an example of what one of the water districts is doing. And I took this screenshot from Valley Water District in San Jose. I took this screenshot from their website because they've created a rebate program for these commercial sites. And they're calling it something like Mulch for sprinklers or something like that, so that you turn off all the sprinklers and you just and it's a rebate program. You just bring in a great big load of mulch and you cover up the grass. So it's not even sheet mulching, it's just mulching that grass. And then what you can do is you can address the individual trees that happen to be in that lawn. So then let's talk about life support for trees when we stop watering the lawn. This is a an offering from the California Center for Urban Horticulture at UC Davis. What they did was they went to an irrigation store and they looked at all the parts that were available, and they put their heads together with the guys that worked at the irrigation store, and they said, help us figure out what kind of kit can we make that can provide life support for trees during a drought. So they went around the irrigation store and they gathered up all of these parts. And these are parts that you could actually, now this doesn't come in a kit. You actually have to buy these things separately. But if you were to go to this website that I've got the URL for here, and by the way, there are a lot of links in this presentation, and we're going to be sending you the PDF version of this presentation within a week. And I believe you should be able to click on all of the links. So we've got the links. If you were to go to their website, they explain all of this, and that these parts don't come in a kit, but they explain everything really carefully, and they have great instructions on how to implement this as life support for trees and grass. So somebody was asking at one point, well, what if you want to mow the grass? And so for one thing, one of my answers to that is that most likely you don't want to mow it because you're not watering it unless the grass has died, and because the grass is going to die if you're not watering the grass. So you probably won't be wanting to water the grass because the grass is dying. So you're watering the tree. So they show this ring here on this, and I show other rings or spirals also going down, but this is one of the options, and they call this the tree ring irrigation contraption. Now, when you're considering watering trees, you need to know where the feeder roots are for trees, because starting at the trunk, when the tree is brand new, the feeder roots are right there in the root ball. Say you get a tree from a nursery in a 5-gallon or 15-gallon container and you plant it in the landscape. Well, the feeder roots are right there in that root ball. And as the tree gets established and the roots start heading out into the native soil, then those roots that are right around the base of the tree, they become woody. It's like underground branches. And those roots are not drinking water. Okay, so it doesn't make any sense to provide water within this area of the tree underground, because those roots ain't drinking anything. So what they say here is they show the feeder roots as being outside the drip line of the tree. And it is said that the roots will extend 2 to 3 times the canopy. They say that in this diagram, but I also know that I hear out there really prevalently that the roots can actually extend up to 1.5 times the height of the tree. Okay, so what I like to say about redwoods is that I tell people, hey, your neighbors are watering your redwoods. Okay, because those roots are way, way out there in the feeder roots, and redwoods roots are generally in the top 1 foot of the soil, the top 12 inches. So the feeder roots, what they're saying here is start at the drip line, and then the feeder roots head out from there. In my experience, there are feeder roots that are inside the drip line as well. So then what we usually say is to start 3/4 of the way out from the drip line and then go out from there with your irrigation water. Okay. And then in the way of depth for trees' roots or any plant's roots, what they say is that 90% of a tree's roots are within the top 12 inches of soil. And 95% of a tree's roots are in the top 18 inches of soil. All right. So, and mainly that the feeder roots, I'm talking about the feeder roots, not the support roots. The support roots could go down deeper to keep that tree nice and well supported. So the reason the feeder roots really don't hardly go beyond 18 inches at all is because roots need water and air. And generally there is not air much deeper than 18 inches down. And in some soils, if they're compacted, there may not be air more than 12 inches down. So, and roots definitely need air as well as water. Okay, so then this is the anatomy of the roots and where you want to be applying the water. And then this is a drawing that I did myself, and in my I'm actually more an irrigation designer than anything else. That's my day job, is I design irrigation. And this is a drawing that I adapted from the way I depict irrigation in my irrigation designs, is that I like to use spirals under trees. And spirals are really cool because as the tree grows in width, you can add on to that spiral so that you get more and more and more actual emitters or water coming out of that. Now you can either use soaker hose for this. So we have a garden hose that's coming in, and then at the garden hose, then what we do is we use either drip line, which is emitter line. That's what I say here, or emitter line. So either soaker hose or emitter line is this dashed line that is the spiral. And what you do is you start with that spiral 3/4 of the way out, or 75% of the way out from the trunk to the edge of the canopy. And then you spiral around. Okay. That is the strategy, the tree spiral strategy. Now, if you have trees in lawn, what you really should be doing is try to get that grass away from underneath the canopy of the tree. This is a best practice for trees because trees and lawns really don't get along. When I was doing a lot of consulting and I would consult with people about trees in their lawns, I would tell them that eventually you're going to have to make a decision. It's either the tree or the lawn, because they do not coexist together very well at all. So eventually something has to go. So these days, since we're getting rid of the lawns, that's the answer to that conundrum. Is it the tree or is it the lawn? Well, excuse me, now we're saving the trees. So try to get that lawn out from under the tree as best you can, and then get mulch there, and keep the mulch away from the actual base of the tree, because anything that's wet that's up against the base could promote crown rot in the tree. Okay. And then this is a photo of an actual drip irrigation line. We call this emitter line also. And that tree ring irrigation contraption from UC Davis, it uses this kind of emitter line. It's got the emitters built in to the tubing at regular spacing. So this is an example of that. Now this is what I do. I put in these spirals. Now there are also two questions that I ask when it comes to irrigating trees. The first question is, sorry, I'm just doing a time check here. The first question is that tree sitting there alone? And when I say alone, what I mean is, are there plants underneath it? If the tree is sitting there with no plants underneath it, then what we do is we water by the gallon. So in other words, this is a fruit tree. I believe this is a peach tree. So I looked up in the How Much Water app, how many gallons a week a peach tree needs. And I got the number of gallons per week. And then I figured out how many emitters I would need to provide that many gallons a week to this peach tree. So I don't have to worry about any plants underneath it. So I'm just watering the tree and I can find out how many gallons of water this tree needs. So that's how we can handle it when the tree is alone, like you have an orchard. Or even if it's not an organized orchard, if your trees do not have other plantings beneath them. Now, if the trees do have plantings beneath them, then you're watering areas. You're not watering by the gallon. You're watering a whole area. You're watering a landscape. So when I say you're watering an area, what I mean by that is now, and especially when we're talking about drought, and now we have this situation where we have to be really careful about the amount of water that we use. So what we recommend, if there are other plants and around the trees, it's just you're watering the garden itself, is that you fill up the soil profile. So in other words, you give it a good long irrigation to the point where the soil is saturated. It's saturated, okay? Everybody's happy. The deeply rooted trees and shrubs, the water is down to as deep to where their feeder roots are, maybe down to 18 inches, but most likely more like 12 inches. So we've got it completely saturated down to 12 inches. And then what we do is we watch really carefully. So now it's down, and depending on how shallow the roots are for the other plants in here. So say, for instance, with this landscape, we have ground covers in here whose roots are only 4 inches down, but we have shrubs and trees whose roots are 18 inches down. Then we start at a saturated state or a full, think of it as like you just filled up your pool, all right? As the days go by and the water evaporates from that pool, you fill it up again. Say that pool holds 5,000 gallons, but after a week, it's only gone down an inch. So you put in enough water to fill it up an inch. So you top it off, basically. So that's what we do with landscapes, trees and whole landscapes, is that we fill it up. And then when the water leaves, we top it off. So it just leaves a little bit at a time. If we have plants in here with shallow roots, those plants are the ones that are going to be complaining the soonest. So even though there are trees in here that only need to be watered maybe every other week, we have plants in there that need to be watered more often. Okay, so trees with other plants that are of differing depths, that's how we handle it. We fill up the soil profile, and then as the water leaves the soil, we top it off. We fill it back up. Okay. And by the way, smart controllers do this automatically, and I'll be saying that a few times here. All right, irrigation schedules for trees. So this is the last section. And actually, let me go ahead. I'm keeping track of my progress over here on this other computer so I can see how many more slides I have. Okay. Okay. I only have about six or seven more slides. So, okay, irrigation schedules for trees. Now, At UC Davis, they've been doing research since 2005, and they call it the Landscape Plant Irrigation Trials. And the reason I'm showing this is, and this is for irrigation scheduling. The reason I'm showing this is because in this research, they determined, and they say this quite emphatically, that all plants, until they're established, are high water plants. Okay. All plants, until they are established, are high water plants. So in other words, if you went to the nursery tomorrow and bought 10 lavenders and planted them, those would not be low water plants for at least a year. They would be high water plants until they're established. And what they say is that plants get established in 3 strong growing seasons. I like to say a year. In my experience, it's usually about a year. But trees take 3 to 5 years to get established. All right. So then just remember that with your irrigation scheduling, that if they're new plants, they're high water plants. And establishment means that those roots have headed out into the native soil. They're not all wound up in that root ball anymore, just sitting there in that cushy potting soil anymore. They've ventured out into the native soil. And that's when a plant is considered established. All right. So then this is very relevant to irrigation scheduling, because if we're watering high water plants, that's a whole lot more water than low water plants. Okay. Now, this is a common scheduling practice that I would like you to avoid, and that is setting that schedule for the hottest time of year and leaving it all the way, setting it in July, leaving it in August, September, and October until it starts raining in November, and then just shutting off your controller. That's what this shows. It shows the blue is the water requirement of the plants in inches per month, and the red is common watering practices. It shows putting in that 100% peak schedule in July and leaving it. And look at how the water requirement goes down, down, down from August, September, and October. So all of this red that extends above the blue bar is water waste, my friend. So we really want to avoid that. We want to, we want to change the irrigation schedule and put in a different schedule every month, not seasonally, monthly. Okay, and smart controllers do this every day based on real-time weather. So they don't adjust seasonally, they don't adjust monthly, they adjust daily. So I would very much recommend that you use smart controllers because they save water. Proven to save water. And then here I'm just pointing you to like a neon sign. Take advantage of the smart controller rebates. The water providers have wonderful smart controller rebates. They are paying us literally to use smart controllers. And in my experience, I just love smart controllers. And in my experience, smart controllers save a lot of water. Okay, so irrigation scheduling and assistance. So who or what can help you with your irrigation scheduling? Now, this is a way to what I'm talking about here is putting into your controller. Most irrigation controllers, modern irrigation controllers, actually all of the ones that I see that were manufactured in the last 5 or 6 years at least, they have this feature called seasonal adjust. So what you do is you put in a schedule for that peak time, which is July. It's the hottest time schedule. And then you put in, for every month, you put in what the percent adjustment would be. July is 100%, and all of the other months are less than 100%. So if you put in that July peak schedule and you put in the rest of these percentages, the controller will adjust the runtime minutes based on that percentage. And then here is a URL just that shows you what, well, actually that's kind of complicated, so I'm not going to explain that. All right. And then there are a couple of free apps that are out there, free web applications that are out there that can help you with scheduling. And one of them is this When to Water landscape irrigation scheduler. And we actually developed this about 6 years ago in under contract with the Department of Water Resources, California. So this has been out there for 6 years, used by a lot of people. It works and it helps you create accurate irrigation schedules. And then we have the Tri-Valley WaterWise water calculator as well. And this water calculator can walk you through creating an irrigation schedule as well. So we've got a couple of ways that you can create accurate irrigation schedules for your trees and your veggie gardens, your whole landscape. Okay, so then that's it. And I hope that you learned a thing or two, and I hope that you feel more confident about irrigating trees and hopefully having them thrive during this time. We really want to take good care of our trees. So let's go get them, Tiger. All right, so then let's go ahead and we have a few things that we want to tell you about the Water District offerings. And let's see here. So we have rebate offerings, and I'll talk about these for the Zone 7 part of it. We have Zone 7, Cal Water, and Pleasanton. And I'm not going to go through this list, but we've got it here. I'm going to just calm down here and stop talking for a few seconds so that you can peruse this. And then, of course, you're going to get this also from the emailed to you as well. All right, so other rebate offerings. All right. So then let's go ahead and move on to Leah, and she will talk to you about Dublin San Ramon Services District offerings. Take it away, Leah.
Hello, I'm Leah Blevins. I'm the Public Affairs Specialist for Dublin San Ramon Services District. If you could go to the next slide, please. So here you'll see all of our stage 2, well, some of our stage 2 water use rules, and the primary ones being currently irrigation is limited to no more than 3 non-consecutive days a week. And then beginning November 1st, that will go down to 1 day a week. And that's for all of our stage 2 that has been in place since last year. And of course, maximizing your irrigation by watering after 9 p.m. or before 6 a.m. to reduce evaporation. And now that we're hopefully getting a little bit of rain season, it would be prohibited during rain and within 48 hours after rainfall. And we have all of our water use regulations posted on the DSRSD website. We have a water conservation section. And next slide, please. We have a great tool. It's called Aqua Hawk, and it helps customers keep track of water use. We have about 65% of our customers are currently registered users. And this way you get 24/7 access to hour-by-hour water use information, as well as your water use history. And ultimately, this is a great way to help spot suspected leaks, and which we can see on the next slide, please. Here, there's 2 different screenshots of 2 different Aqua Hawk accounts. The top graph shows no leak indicated, and the bottom graph shows continuous flow each hour, sort of that little bit of flow each hour, which does show a possible leak. Next slide. And lastly, for our customers in the Dublin San Ramon area, we have water conservation devices available at our district office. You'll see some of them pictured here, and as well as our hours. You can always check our website as well. We have a form online, so they'll be ready to pick up once you come on by. And I believe Rita is up next with Pleasanton.
Oops, you're muted, Rita.
Sorry about that. I'm Rita DeCandia, Environmental Services Manager with the City of Pleasanton, and happy to talk to you briefly about the different water conservation programs that the City of Pleasanton has to offer. Next slide, please. So I'd like to draw your attention to our website, pleasantonwaterconservation.com. So this is the main website that you can go to for all the city information with regards to the water conservation programs and services that we offer. And with regards to our current stage 2 water conservation measures, on that page as well, you can click on the link to pull up the image there that you see there with the list of all the different water conservation measures. You can pull that PDF up so you can review it as well. There's a lot of information, but it certainly is very similar to a lot of what you just heard Leah as well describe for DSRSD's service area as well too. Next slide. We also offer a customer water portal as well too, that you can also click on the link when you're on the pleasantonwaterconservation.com site. You'll see a utility billing link on the side navigation bar. And if you haven't signed up already, it's a great way as well to kind of peruse and see your hourly water use. And then if you select to receive auto leak notifications under your settings profile, you'll also be able to receive automatically, if there's suspicion of a leak, a quick notice to let you know that there's a potential leak at your property as well too. So we encourage you to sign up if you haven't already done so. Thank you very much. And now we're going to move over to City of Livermore.
Hello, everyone. My name is Natalie, and I work for the City of Livermore as its Water Resources Communications Representative. Next slide, please. All right, so I'm sure a lot of you who live in Livermore already know this, but for those who are unaware, we have 2 water service providers here in the city. The center of town gets its water service from Cal Water, while the north and the eastern sections get their water service from Livermore Municipal Water. To make things a little bit easier for folks, it doesn't matter who provides your water service. The restrictions in place are the same citywide. And I know there's a lot of text on the screen, but really the most important thing is that first bullet point. We're asking that all properties throughout the city only water 3 days per week. And so each property is assigned different days that they can water based on whether it's an odd or even numbered street address. So you might have Mondays, Wednesdays, Fridays, or Tuesday, Thursday, Saturdays. Next slide. And then very similar to DSRSD in Pleasanton, if you get your water service from the city, we also have a customer portal. We call ours the Love Your Water customer portal. And if you create an account, you will be able to see your water use hour by hour and also check to see if your property has any leaks. That's it for me.
All right, great. Thanks, guys. And so then we just have one more slide, and this is the resources. These are the resources, and there are lots of really great resources here. So do recommend that you check these out. We've got the Garden by Number. We've got the Tri-Valley Waterwise website with all the beautiful plants on there. And we've got WooCalls. Let's see, qualified water efficient landscaper, so that you can hire somebody who knows what they're doing from them, which is Quell. We call it Quell for short. Also, the California Landscape Contractors Association, or the CLCA, has folks listed on the website who know what they're doing as well. And then we have Irrigation Association here for finding a certified professional. And then here is the contact information for all 5 of these water districts, including Zone 7, which is the wholesaler, and then the other 4, which are your direct water districts. Okay, so then Leah, Do you have any questions for me?
We do have a couple of questions, and Natalie was really great to answer a few directly in the chat, specifically a couple Livermore related questions. So I'm gonna skip those for now, and if we have time, we can always go back. The couple that I think you would be great to answer. There's one, our property has mature trees at least 30 years old. How do we determine if they need low or moderate water amounts? One tree is a silver maple, about 6 stories tall, for example.
Well, so the way you start with that is normally I would say, look it up in WooCalls. We have this resource, and actually, let me go ahead and go to the previous slide here. We have this resource here, and it's right here on, it's called WooCalls, which stands for Water Use Classifications of Landscape Species. Normally, I would say, look up the plant in WooCalls, because I happen to know that maples are moderate water use trees. And so I could tell you just right off the bat. In fact, if you knew what those trees were, I could probably tell you right now whether they're moderate or low water trees. But actually what I'm recommending something a little different these days because of the drought. What I'm recommending is I'm asking people to just consider everything in their landscape as low water plants. Okay, so treat everything as a low water plant. So then when you use these resources to create irrigation schedules, go ahead and just say they're low water plants and create the schedule. And then what you do is you give extra water to those plants that complain the loudest. All right. So you're treating everything as low water. And then say there's a tree, or there are a tree or two that are saying, oh, this just isn't enough for me. And they're starting to flag a little. Well, then that's who you take that warm up water from the house to. Those plants that are complaining because you're giving them a low water regime. So that's what I'm suggesting these days, rather than looking things up and figuring out what water use they are. Would just call everything low water plants and see how they do. I think that a lot of times we can be quite surprised at how well they will do, moderate water plants will do with low water regimes. Okay.
All right, another question. Where around the tree do I water to maximize the absorption into the roots?
Okay, so what you do is you start 3/4 of the way out from the canopy or the drip line. So as far as that canopy reaches, like pretend I'm a tree, and the tips of my fingers are the edges of my canopy. So then 3/4 of the way out from that, so just inside my wrists, if it's me, I want to start watering just inside my wrists, and then head outward from there, because the feeding roots are going out, because the roots have to go out further for the tree to grow above ground, to grow out further. So where you look down, you look at the edge of the canopy, that's where the feeding roots are. The most of the feeding roots are at the edge of the canopy, because they are pushing out so that the branches can come in above them. So start 3/4 of the way out from the trunk and keep going out from there.
All right, we've got a question about gray water.
Okay.
Is it a problem to use this if you have a water softener? Have read that this soft water is not good for plants.
Right, because water softeners use salts. And so, and salt is death to plants. Plants really don't want salt in their roots. In fact, salts are things that we're often looking for the salinity of soil, because plants don't do well with salts. So I have heard that there are there are salts that you can use in your water softener that are less salty, as it were, so that I would do more research on that and find out if you can indeed do that. But if you're using the standard salts in the water softener, I would say don't use that for your plants.
All right, another question. I have a very stressed redwood tree. How do I save it? The tree ring irrigation contraption?
Yeah, you can do that. Are there other plants beneath the redwood tree, or is okay, so if the redwood tree is by itself, we know that those roots are probably only about a foot down. The feeding roots are about a foot down, and they go way out. Like I said earlier, your neighbors are watering your redwoods. Okay. So what you can do is you can supplement that and start 3/4 of the way out to the end of the drip line and then just keep going out. That applies to really all trees, not, even redwoods. And redwoods are high water plants. And they do require quite a bit of water in the Tri-Valley area because I don't know if you get any fog in that area, but if you do have any areas that get fog, then that helps the redwoods, because in the area where I live in Richmond, I'm in the fog belt, and any redwoods that are here, they water themselves with the fog. So that's what redwoods are supposed to do, is they water themselves in the summer fog.
All right, we've got another question about gray water.
Okay.
Does the type of soap used in washing machines, dishwashers, or baths matter for gray water use in gardens?
Yeah, it does. And there are detergents that are lower in salts, because again, it's the salts that you want to look for. And I would think you would be one Google search away from finding out which detergents are best for using gray water, using laundry to landscape water. Just one Google search away, and you can find out which detergents are the best.
I'm not seeing any new questions coming in, and I think Natalie pretty much covered the other ones in the chat. There was one sort of more general one just about sheet mulching, which I realize is sort of a larger topic, but sort of what exactly is sheet mulching? If you want to sum that up in your
Yeah,
elevator pitch.
sure. The elevator pitch on sheet mulching is that it's a wonderful way to either kill off weeds in your yard or get rid of your grass. And so what it means is that you don't have to pull anything out. What you do is you cover it up, and you deny either the weeds or the lawn access to the sun, so that they can't photosynthesize. So they can't, and when they can't photosynthesize, they just end up dying over time. So the sheet mulch, what you do is you put a layer of, you start with the ultimate recipe is like lasagna. You start with a layer like an inch of compost, and then put cardboard on top of that. Now you can use either cardboard boxes, or you can use cardboard that they sell in great big 4 or 5 foot rolls. And it's a thinner cardboard that you can just roll out over the landscape. Or you can use newspaper, or you can just put down mulch, put down arbor chips. Ask a local tree company to dump arbor chips or mulch in your driveway and let everybody have at it. So sheet mulch really is more like you're covering it up with a sheet of something. either cardboard or newspaper or something. And then you're putting on top of that, you put a layer of mulch, or you could put another layer of compost and then another layer of mulch. Or very simply, just bring in the mulch. You can use mulch only to kill the lawn. And what it does is it composts in place. If you cover up a lawn or weeds with either sheet mulching or just mulch, then what you do is those weeds and that lawn, it dies, but it composts in place, and it provides a food source for the soil microbes. And those microbes, those micro and macro organisms in the soil, work magic in the soil and make it so that that soil can hold on to water better and longer, and hold on to that rainfall that I was talking about earlier. How do we hold on to rainfall? How do we make our landscapes into living sponges so that when the water falls from the sky, it hits the landscape, stays on the landscape as long as possible? So that's the elevator pitch for sheet mulching. And it could just be as simple as mulching, and without the cardboard and the compost and the mulch and all those layers. You can just throw down arbor chips.
All right, it looks like we've got one more question. Do you recommend deep root watering devices for trees?
I don't really. I used to be a certified arborist back in the day. I think I let my certification go about 10 years ago. And it was because I wanted to be a water specialist, an irrigation specialist, instead of a tree specialist anymore. And whenever I would ask people, other arborists, or do any research about those, I didn't really see that they were all that effective. So some people swear by them and some people swear at them. So I would say that I would say Google it and see what people think about them. I've not heard the greatest things about them. And I've actually never used them, nor have I ever specified them for any of my designs. So that's that with those.
I think you've covered it all.
All right. Excellent. Well, we're just about at 7:30 anyway. So then I would like to thank Natalie, Leah, and Rita for joining us here today. And I would like to thank the attendees who are still here and staying with us, and who are here to the bitter end. And I wish you all very well, and let's keep our trees thriving. Let's all have happy trees forever and ever.